much for joining us right here on The Right View. I'm Lara Trump, and I am so excited to welcome my guests tonight, Lynne Patton, my good friend and former regional administrator in the Housing and Urban Development Department, and author of The Choice, The Abortion Divide in America, Danielle Gill. Ladies, welcome back.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks for joining us. We're going to start today by talking about, I even hesitate to use this terminology, the COVID stimulus relief bill. It's $1.9 trillion, and I'm going to read off some of the things that are actually in this bill for folks, but just from the jump here, let's talk about the fact that 9% of the $1.9 trillion bill actually goes to COVID relief.
It's unbelievable.
Maybe I'm crazy, but if I had the authority to dictate how taxpayer money was used during a pandemic where, millions of Americans have lost jobs, their wages have been cut, they haven't made the same amount of money, they're in desperate need of help. If I was putting forward an almost $2 trillion bill and I wanted to keep a straight face about it, I sure as heck would have put more than 9% of that money towards COVID relief, Lynne.
Absolutely.
I feel like this is just a standard operation for the Democrats.
Laura, you've got people who need roofs over their heads. They need heat, obviously, in
Texas
the winter.
They have, yes.
Of course. They need food. They need jobs. Their kids are still at home, so their schools need to be funded. They need to be able to have access to tablets. What we saw here in New York is over 500,000 underserved kids are probably going to be years behind because they just didn't have the technology to keep up at home. And here's the biggest part. They're still sitting on this bill, yet Democrats control Congress.
That's right.
So they don't have their scapegoat of Donald Trump anymore to point fingers and blame. They can't even blame Mitch, McConnell. This is all being stymied because of themselves.
Yeah.
And, at the very least, send over a standalone bill, which is what they always used to accuse us of not doing.
Right.
Send over a standalone bill to Biden's desk where it's just for the stimulus checks or it's just for COVID-19. Forget all of this stuff for a moment and then argue about it later. But they can send a standalone bill to help people today, and they're not doing that either. So I think that says a lot.
Well, of course it does. But this is, again, Danielle, not unlike the Democrats of days past. This is it's a liberal wish list is what this is. I'm going to read through just a couple of things in this bill. We have federally mandated minimum wage, ability for Planned Parenthood to receive funds from the Paycheck Protection Program. Planned Parenthood, let me remind folks of that. Stimulus checks could go to families where a parent is an illegal immigrant. There is a section in here where there were calls to have the Inspector General audit this report and actually see where the COVID-19 funds went. Democrats blocked that.
Wow.
You have $135 million for the National Endowment for the Arts. The arts have been cleaning up arts and museums. The Kennedy Center, how much did we give in the last one?
We should all be ballet dancers.
I mean, $135 million for the National Endowment for the Humanities. $200 million, here's the museum, for the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences. And maybe my favorite one in here, and I think maybe we know who to thank for this, Nancy Pelosi, $100 million plus for a Bay Area rapid transit expansion just outside of Nancy's district in San Francisco.
Does it go from her house to the salon?
Not that one anymore. I don't think she's welcome back there.
Just checking.
But Danielle, I mean, it almost seems like a slap in the face to the American people. We have been dealing with this pandemic for almost a year. We are coming up on the 1-year anniversary of 15 days to slow the spread. Right. We can thank Dr. Fauci and a lot of other fine folks for that. But when the American people really so desperately need help, when they are not able to open their businesses, when people are not able to function as normal, and then you see what is packed in this bill, I mean, I feel it is an insult to the American people, quite frankly.
It is a total insult, and they won't even have any bipartisan support. They love to say, oh, we're bipartisan because Mitt Romney or someone's going to support it. But no Republican is going to support this because it's packed with so many things that are horrible. And just to touch quickly on the Planned Parenthood one, the fact that this is a PPP fund, which is supposed to be going to small businesses.
Right.
It's supposed to be going to businesses that are, really needing help right now because everyone's businesses are, everyone's turning to Amazon and so on. Planned Parenthood is not a small business. They're the largest abortion provider in the country. So even aside from the abortion topic, they're not a small business. So all these PPP funds should be going to actual small businesses.
And we all know that it's actually, illegal for places that fund abortion to get federal dollars at this point. So,
but I mean, at this point, I feel like the Democrats have bent the rules so much. Why not, Lynn? Do it again here.
I mean, I wrote down a few things that they tried to pass when your father-in-law was present and sneak in there, and it wouldn't surprise me if this stuff is actually still in there again, which is mandatory cash bail, a voter ID ban, nationwide ballot harvesting. They wanted approval. This was pre-election, mind you, to be able to legally harvest ballots, and stimulus checks again for illegal aliens.
Yeah.
So all of that stuff is probably still in here. I can't imagine they would take it out because it works. Let's just admit, they obviously were able to get a lot of things in there before that they can't now. And look, mandatory cash bail, the governor of Illinois just signed this.
Right.
And, I can't think of a place where there's more gun violence, more dangerous folks that are being locked up. And it's a slap in the face to the police officers who risk their lives trying to put these people in jail just for them to turn around in a revolving door and get out the next day. You want this nationwide. It'll be interesting to see what happens to Chicago. I never thought it could get any worse, but it will.
That's probably sadly true. I just think, look, we're seeing the true colors of the Democrats in so many ways, and I think it's really just so egregious whenever these folks say that they want to help people. That is always the line they use. They're supposed to represent folks around the country from certain districts, from certain states, and then you give us this bill. This is what they're trying to push forward. I think it's terrible, but hopefully people can see how crazy it is. I think they bank on the fact that maybe, Danielle, people aren't going to look this stuff up. They're just going to say, oh, it took $2 trillion to get us through this next COVID stimulus relief. I think it sets a terrible precedent. But we'll see what happens with it.
Yeah.
Hopefully some of this gets taken out because it's crazy.
And I want to remind people watching that there are 20 House Democrats in Trump red districts. So, I'll be happy to post those names on my social media tonight. Because they should think twice about supporting something like this.
Absolutely.
Because we're going to come for you in 2022.
We are.
And I think they'll see the effects of this. They'll see that, wait, how come I'm not doing better? How come these COVID bills passed? And how come my family isn't in a better place? And even as you mentioned with learning, with schools, I mean, why is all the funding going to schools that are closed, going to schools that have virtual learning? The money is not sticking with the child, wherever the child is, which is what President Trump was pushing.
Yes.
And I remember hearing Kayleigh McEnany talk about school choice and talk about how the funding needs to stay with the child for their learning. And they're not learning right now.
No, and I remember Katrina Pearson telling me in Texas, that was about $10,000 per student. That would have been great for people to have during the quarantine, to be able to get a desk for their kid, to be able to get a computer for their child.
Yep.
That's money that was sitting in the district school system and it's doing nothing.
Well, the good news is that the museums are looking great. The arts across America are going to be
that are closed.
The closed museums
they're going to be in
are
great
funded.
shape. Yes. I don't know. They're going to wax the floors extra. We'll see when they open back up. I want to move on because I saw an article in the Daily Wire that really kind of struck me, and I think it's very relevant for right now. Basically, it was a warning from our founding fathers about how quickly and how easily we could lose America. And a lot of it seems to be coming to fruition right now. Benjamin Franklin, to start with the first one, worried that a salaried bureaucracy could breed career politicians. Well, imagine that. The average salary, I think, for politicians in Washington, D.C. for Congress is somewhere around $174,000 a year. That is a lot more than the average American makes. So it has become a problem because we do have career politicians. We have the Nancy Pelosi's, the Chuck Schumers. We have these folks like Maxine Waters who have lived off of the system, off of government, and being a politician for their entire lives. They all have these great mansions. I'll name another one, Joe Biden, who started as one of the youngest members in the Senate ever, and he is now our oldest president. But it is a problem because you want these folks to be held accountable. You don't want to encourage them to be in a position because of a salary. And yet, unfortunately, we've come to that place. Danielle, I'd love to get your thoughts about this because as a young woman, your generation, you're slightly younger than Lynne. Just slightly.
I was thinking to myself, is this a diss on me? No.
You guys look so
We're
amazing.
A little older, and I'm a little older than this one.
I don't believe it.
I feel like it's going to be up to maybe your generation to rectify this.
This is a huge battle.
Yeah.
Because, young people are being indoctrinated by the schools, and that's a whole other conversation. But this history of Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison warning us about the press would be breeding tyranny, it's like they don't know this history because they're not taught it in school. So they have to listen to the right view to get this history from us and then read into it more and look it up for themselves. But I think it's just what's so scary is the fact that when young people come out and see all of this, they're shocked because they've never heard it before. So they just think this can't be true.
And to know that they predicted this is just so Nostradamus level scary. Because, and not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it's one of the reasons why I think they had to take down your father. Because a second term with Trump, unchecked, unfiltered, which means you're not campaigning again, would have probably resulted in him finally draining the swamp and looking into term limits.
That's right.
And they would have, their fairy tale would have ended. And Ben Franklin said something else that's also very relevant right now with COVID, which is those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And that's what we're seeing with COVID.
Yeah, I want to go through this whole list for our viewers, but I'm going to go to that one quickly. Benjamin Franklin warning against prioritizing safety over liberty. And that is exactly where we have found ourselves right now with this COVID pandemic, because what we have been told is that our constitutional rights are going to take a back seat. It doesn't matter what is legally supposed to be, for us as Americans. That's gonna go away. And because of COVID, because of the safety protocol, we have had to change our lives. We've had to shut down businesses. We've had to shelter in place. We've had to be forced into wearing masks. We've had to. I have to force my 3-year-old to wear a mask on an airplane. Like all of these things. We can't gather and worship.
People are dying alone.
There are so many issues that I think would have horrified our founding fathers, and we're seeing them now. And the problem, I think, becomes when you give all of this authority, when you give an exception to governors like Governor Andrew Cuomo, like Gavin Newsom, like all of these folks who they now have exceptional powers as our governors in these states. They don't want to give those up very easily. And I don't think they will give them up very easily. And what history teaches us is that the window in which to reverse this is very small. And as Americans, it is up to us to stand up and say, the Bill of Rights says that I'm able to do X, Y, and Z. And, this safety protocol for almost a year now that we've been under, at some point has to go. It really does.
Absolutely. And not to keep harping on it because, but we had Vivian Zayas on here the other day, and Governor Cuomo is the perfect example of somebody who is no longer fit to make executive decisions based on the safety, in the name of safety of their constituents. Because it's too personal. It's become too, heated and too relevant, to his reputation. And, we saw that he's suppressing information and making decisions that don't benefit, the people he was voted to serve. And so those are the people who need to be stripped of those emergency powers.
So I'm just going to go down this list and go through a couple more quickly. Thomas Jefferson dreaded politicizing the Supreme Court. Now, we have seen what we put Brett Kavanaugh through, Amy Coney Barrett through. We've seen the hostile way that the folks that Donald Trump put forward as Supreme Court justice nominees, the way they were treated. We know that the Supreme Court now has been fully politicized, and that is a scary thing. James Madison warned that an unarmed people and biased press would breed tyranny.
Wow.
I mean, I can't think of a better example of where we stand in America today. Joe Biden has already said that he wants to start taking away our Second Amendment rights. He talked about that last week. But then you look at the fact that we had, I think it was 96% negative media coverage of Donald Trump during his presidency.
Thank you.
And
wow.
You see the way that he was censored by big tech, by the way that the media and big tech as a whole has come together to support one party.
It's a shadow campaign.
It is really terrifying whenever you have such bias out there, yet these are the folks, Danielle, that are supposed to be supplying America with truth and with facts. I think James Madison was onto something, and sadly, we're going down this path right now very quickly.
Exactly, and even with them bringing up this idea, these few Democratic congressmen asking, hey, AT&T, hey, Verizon, you guys should remove Fox News and Newsmax and One America.
Right?
You can't even put them on your satellite network. You can't even allow people to access them. And I think it just shows the fact that they do want to use the press as tyranny. They don't want to have the open debate. They don't want these ideas to be accessed even in a small corner of the media. They won't even let us have that tiny slice.
Right.
So they don't want the access at all. And I think it just goes back to this whole idea of our founding fathers didn't want us to give up, our freedom for safety, but it shows us that we don't even get safety in return.
That's
because
true.
when we give up our
Very
freedom,
good point.
we're not safe. Even with, our Second Amendment rights, it's like those rights were intended so that we could protect ourselves from the government, not even from necessarily an attacker, but because our government is becoming weaponized against us. And it also even reminds me of the case that the Supreme Court came out on in California regarding religious freedom. It's like we saw it as a win because they said, oh, you can't have churches lower than other businesses, so it needs to be equal. If you do 25% for restaurants, it has to be 25% for churches. But if we look at the Constitution, they can't limit that at all.
That's right.
That is not their jurisdiction to even have that right. And I think we need to push back against this because once our religious freedom and Second Amendment and all of this is just gotten rid of, I mean, where is the Constitution? Where are our judges on this?
Absolutely. And that's why it's great that governors like, DeSantis are putting forward the censorship and I believe repression bill. Sorry if I got that wrong, but we need more people like that to push these big tech companies up against the wall and say, we're not going to take it anymore.
Well, and it's a problem because the Democrats, we know, are funded almost fully by Silicon Valley. The donations to Democratic campaigns come
more than ever.
So much of it comes from these folks. So why would they have any reason to want to do the right thing?
Absolutely.
They want to help out their guy that they donated money to, or their woman they donated money to. I'm going to go over the last two here. George Washington predicted that political factions could tear the nation apart. Well, we see it happening every day. It's so sad to see the way that, sadly, you can't even almost be friends with people that think differently than you do. It didn't used to be a problem. It has now become a problem. And finally, John Adams feared future generations would take liberty for granted. And Danielle, you just kind of touched on this. You see that they do these random polls for a younger generation now, kids that are in high school, for example, and so few of them have positive feelings about their country. So few of them consider themselves patriots and respect the American flag and the history of our country. And I think that's only going to be exacerbated over the next couple of decades if we don't fix our school system. First of all, we got to get the kids back to school. I say this all the time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Get the kids back in school. You've got the hot mic incident, by the way. There was this Board of Education folks who didn't realize that their Zoom meeting was live, and yet the entire community was able to view it, and they were mocking these parents, suggesting that the parents wanted daycare for their kids, suggesting that some of the parents wanted to like go get high, do drugs.
What?
I'm sorry, we want our kids back in school to learn. It is outrageous that they are still out of school almost a year later in some cases.
Yes.
But
these are parents trying to work.
That's exactly right. Now they can't go to work. But Danielle, I really think that this is one that I find almost the most frightening, because when you have a generation of children coming up in America who don't respect this country, who don't love this country, that's one thing that I know was instilled in me very early on. It really frightens me.
Yeah, and I think that that's why the Democrats are so against school choice, because most people support school choice. About 2/3 of all people support it, and so it would pass. If we were able to pass it, we could get it through, but then people would be able to give their money to schools that actually teach real history. They actually teach about the founding fathers and all this. But as long as the Democrats are trapping students in these horrible schools run by boards of these people who are, saying people want to do drugs and don't even want the schools open. So they want to be paid but not do work. It's like, of course, our young people are not going to actually learn American history. Right. And as long as the left is able to push this ideology of anti-Americanism, of the fact that our history is evil and everyone who was associated with our founding is evil, even founding fathers who abhorred slavery, who spoke against all these things. They want to demonize everyone, even Abraham Lincoln. They want to tear down his statue.
They want to take his name off the school district out in San Francisco.
Exactly.
Don't forget that.
Yep.
Well, there's a lot more to get to. We're going to take a very short break, so stay with us, because we're going to talk about some of Joe Biden's picks for very important offices in his administration coming up. Stay right with us. Welcome back to The Right View. You folks at home might remember Merrick Garland as the choice by Barack Obama on the way out of office for Supreme Court. He never actually made it there, but he's back, ladies, don't worry, because this is who Joe Biden has said he would like to be his Attorney General. And it's become very interesting. He has only really been pressed on a couple of key issues, and yet he seems not to really know where he stands on some things. Maybe the folks that are controlling Joe Biden and telling him what to do haven't told Garland exactly what they want to do. Now, the first thing that I found really crazy is he was asked if far-left rioters attacking a federal courthouse was domestic terrorism. And his answer to that was no, because they attacked this federal courthouse at night when it wasn't in session.
Wow.
I don't know.
Nighttime is so much better.
I mean, I know that all the criminals stay in at night, it's just ludicrous.
It makes no sense. But this was his answer, Danielle.
That could be our Attorney General.
Right.
Clearly a brilliant guy.
And then he was questioned, and I think Josh Hawley is the one that did all of this questioning, so kudos to Senator Josh Hawley.
Again.
Great job. Yep. Asked if he would continue prosecuting illegal immigrants, and he said, I don't know. So let me get this straight. The word itself, illegal immigrant, it is illegal. When you come to America,
you've already broken the law.
You don't do it the proper way. You've broken the law. And yet somehow the man who has been positioned to possibly be the Attorney General for the United States doesn't know if he will do that. I mean, it's that I think in itself is a little frightening, because now he's deciding when to actually apply the law and when not to. I think the law is pretty clear, Lynn. Whenever it says something and you have an illegal situation, that's right. It's pretty clear what should happen there.
And let me touch first on the fact that, he said far left rioters attacking a federal courthouse is not domestic terrorism. I take this very personally, because during that time, they actually broke into the federal building as well, and we caught them. And this is where the federal building housed some of my former HUD colleagues. And we caught them trying to tamper with the water intake system.
Oh my gosh.
They were trying to put fertilizer and bleach into the water intake system that housed federal employees.
Wow.
And just because you're not carrying a racist flag when you do it, doesn't mean you're any less lethal or less threatening or less criminal. They're up in arms about January 6th, as they should be. But, again, just because these people are dressed like hippies doesn't make them any less of a terrorist, in my mind. And in fact, they were doing a lot more dangerous things in Portland than they did in D.C., quite frankly. And when it comes to prosecuting illegal immigration, I saw something great the other day. If you broke into a movie theater illegally, if you snuck in to watch a movie, would management then give you free popcorn and free candy and the best seat in the house?
If the management was Joe Biden.
Because that's exactly what's happening with illegal immigration and the Biden administration. And Laura, and we've met so many angel moms over the last 4 years, and but for these illegals, their children would still be alive.
That's right.
So how dare Merrick Garland say that it's not breaking the law when these people are here and operating among us without being checked like normal citizens.
Yeah, and one of the other things that he was asked about was defund the police. Now, his answer was that he and Joe Biden do not support the defund the police initiative, Danielle. Now, let's just back up. If we could go back to, during the campaign, not too many months ago, anytime Joe Biden was asked about this, he sort of kind of tap danced around the question, didn't want to answer. I remember when Kamala Harris said that all of the protests, all the people out there chanting defund the police, all of the chaos that we had all around our country was not going to stop. It was going to keep going on. I remember when folks that worked for the Biden-Harris campaign were bailing out people that had broken the law. And now he's saying, well, we don't really agree with that. It seems so hypocritical because it seems like this is just being politicized. They are using law enforcement whenever it is advantageous for them as Democrats. And whenever it's not advantageous, then they're done with them. They don't want anything to do with our law enforcement officers. I can tell you one person who has always stood for law enforcement. It is Donald J. Trump. And that is from the day I met him 14 years ago until today, and he will continue on forever. People know that's genuine. This doesn't seem very genuine to me.
It's political posturing. I think the Democrats were pushing defund the police. Then they realized, oh, wait, the polling on this is really bad. Most people don't like this. They don't want to defund the police. It actually protects them in many neighborhoods they live in. Most police are doing their job. And, of course, now the Democrats only like policemen if they were policemen at the Capitol. If you're a policeman anywhere else across America, they don't like you. And the fact that Merrick Garland has no idea if he wants to prosecute illegal immigrants, he also doesn't know about women sports. He doesn't know if transgender people should be ending women's sports. He literally doesn't know answers to a lot of these questions. And the fact that he wasn't even prepared to answer these questions shows that, wow, you actually thought you could be on the Supreme Court. You think you can be our Attorney General, and you don't even know your thoughts on these things because you're not sure how they're going to pull. You're not sure how they're going to come across.
Maybe transgenders only play sports at night. we can come to a decision.
Oh, wow.
There it is. We have the solution. So maybe we could get this to Merrick Garland. Okay. I want to move on to Lara Trump. Now, for anybody that has not heard of her, this is a woman who is right now being put forward by the Biden administration to be in charge of OMB, Office of Management and Budget. It's a very, very important job, and yet right before she was announced to be their pick, she deleted over 1,000 tweets. Like, we can't go back and find them.
Talk about transparency.
But it's because these tweets were a little outrageous. I mean, they targeted both Republicans and Democrats. She said some really crazy things about Bernie Sanders, suggested that he was helped by Russia, all sorts of crazy things. But she's got a big problem on her hands because I don't know, Lynne, if she's going to get confirmed. These confirmation hearings have shown that a lot of the stuff she said was a little crazy.
It reminds me, when you talk about putting crazy people forward, when Trump invited that Holocaust denier to speak at the White House. I'm sorry. That was not Trump. That was actually Biden's choice for Assistant Attorney General. And her name was Kristen Clark.
That's
And
true.
she invited a Holocaust denier to speak at Harvard for the Black Students Association. And his name was Tony Martin. And she's still there.
Yeah.
You know, and
Could
this
you-
is the person who's in charge of civil liberties at the DOJ. Who believes in black superiority and anti-Semitism. So does it surprise me that this woman is put forward and undergoing all of this confirmation process and controversial tweets? No, because this is just part and parcel with the Biden administration.
Could you imagine for a moment if this was under the Trump administration and any of these individuals had been put forward? By the way, the woman that you just referenced, Lynne, she wrote an entire thesis, an entire paper at Harvard about black superiority. Take the word black and replace it with white. Could you imagine a second if that existed? It's so wrong.
And could you
It's
imagine
so
if your
crazy.
father-in-law said that blacks and Hispanics don't know how to access the internet
It's
well?
unbelievable.
Right.
Yeah,
You
well,
know?
and
I
we
mean,
know who
come
said
on.
that, Joe Biden.
Oh my God.
But it's all sort of what we figured would happen. I mean,
Right.
who's really running the show in the Biden White House and in the Biden administration? Did Joe Biden really pick these people, or was he sort of these people were picked for him? He probably has no idea about what is going on here. But if he was a true leader, he would stand up and he would say, you know what, these are really concerning things, and maybe this is not a good individual for this particular office. Yet you really haven't seen anything from him. He is, in fact, continuing to stand with Neera Tanden, the OMB pick, despite all of her divisive rhetoric, whenever he's supposed to be the unifier.
Thank you.
So, not surprising there. All right, we're gonna take one more break. We're gonna be right back. You don't want to miss the next segment because we have a lot to talk about. And one of those things is very close friend to former President Donald Trump, Tiger Woods. Stay right with us. Welcome back to The Right View. Well, it would seem, if you thought that the Obama foreign policy back during the Obama days was good, you'll love what Joe Biden has coming up, because he is continuing the same foreign policy failures, ladies, of the Obama administration. It's basically Obama 3.0 now with Joe Biden. You look at things like the Middle East and the fact that you had historic things happen under Donald Trump. He was nominated for 2 Nobel Peace Prizes during his one term in office because of what he was able to do in the Middle East. The Abrams Accord, there was hope of peace in the Middle East. We knew that Iran was being held at bay, that they were not going to develop a nuclear weapon under President Donald Trump. And now Joe Biden comes in. He wants to get right back in and sign back up for the Iran nuclear deal, which was a complete and total disaster, and just it actually is mind-boggling.
Which we discovered they weren't even adhering to.
Of course they weren't.
Right.
Of course they weren't.
In exchange for $300 billion.
But
Go ahead.
I'm just
Just whatever.
It's very worrisome, I think, to see that under Donald Trump, don't forget, we haven't heard about ISIS. We haven't heard about Al-Qaeda. We haven't been worried about a terrorist attack on American soil. Yet the policy now under this new administration is incredibly different, 180 degrees. And it's basically coddling terrorist groups and regimes around the world. I mean, what's your reaction, Danielle, to this?
I mean, my reaction is that Joe Biden moving away from America first, I mean, that should be unacceptable. Any president, whether you're Republican or Democrat, should be America first. The idea that you're going to be president of the United States, but you don't want to advance the United States interest, that is just crazy. But that's what the left pushes. And I think while we're so focused on what's happening at home these next 4 years with, you know, these crazy Antifa groups rising in America the next 4 years, we're going to lose sight of the fact that our enemies are getting stronger abroad. And then we'll come back 4 years later and it's like we have enemies within and we have enemies abroad. And Trump was doing such a great job of keeping peace abroad that we could really focus on improving the lives of the American people. And now that's going to go on the back burner because we're going to have all of these other issues at play.
And you're right. I mean, to put the globalist agenda first, you know, it shows that Biden cares more about what folks in France and Canada think than what his own American people think by going back into the Paris Climate Accord, by going back into the Iran, you know, deal. You know, we proved that they weren't adhering to it. You know, they're going to continue to laugh at us. You know, quite frankly, France and Canada had crappy economies even before,
That's right.
you know, COVID. So why do we care what these countries think of us? And, you know, it's just outrageous. You said the Abraham's Accord, you know, groundbreaking trade came out of that. You know, they celebrated Hanukkah for the first time publicly in the United Arab Emirates. You know, these are things that President Trump will go down in history as having accomplished. And it's just a disgrace. I don't, you know, the other day, Circle Back Girl couldn't even say...
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki.
Couldn't even say outright whether or not she considered Israel an ally anymore.
Wow.
To
really
go
frightening.
from the Abrams Accord to that is just, you know, the party of anti-Israel is back.
Yeah, it's, I mean, when you see that, and you pointed it out, Danielle, during the Zoom G7 summit that Joe Biden attended recently, he made it clear and felt the need to tell our allies that he no longer believed in America first, that is over.
Wow.
Who in their right mind would want a leader of their country that doesn't believe their country should be first? I really am so baffled by this, but I keep thinking back to Iran and the Middle East, and the problem now in my mind is, look, I have 2 young kids, and I see this situation go on when I go out and other folks with their kids, and I've seen some parents that, you know, threaten their kids but never followed up. I'm going to take your toy away. I'm going to take your toy away. They never take the toy away, so the kid does whatever the kid wants to do. Now,
Those were my parents, by the way. Go ahead.
and we know. I love you. My children know if I threaten you once, I'm taking your toy away. If you do it again, the toy is going away. That was President Donald Trump.
Right.
Now under Joe Biden, it's like you have the parent that has empty threats across the world. Our adversaries will never fear us because Joe Biden has no intention of disrupting anything or making people feel uncomfortable or, I don't know, telling terrorist organizations, don't mess with the United States of America because we will come after you. Donald Trump did that.
Yeah.
And this country felt incredibly safe under him. I don't know that we are that safe under a Biden presidency. I really don't. It's very scary to think of. You know?
I don't. And actually, I was just talking about this with somebody on Clubhouse last night. You know, President Trump did so many things, even in Africa. You know, a lot of tyrants and dictators that rule there. This person was telling me, you know, are now feeling back in control. You know, but they were checked under President Trump. And he thinks, yes, that terrorist groups are going to go back into Africa from the Middle East, and you're going to probably see retribution against the West.
Yeah, it's scary stuff. Now, I want to move on to, as I mentioned before we took our break, very close friend to my father-in-law, Tiger Woods. Unfortunately,
And your husband.
And my husband, yes, was in this horrific car accident I'm sure everyone has seen a few days ago. And I was shocked when I saw some of the tweets and some of the responses out there to Tiger Woods. Let me just read for our audience some of the things that I saw and some of the things folks sent me. Tiger Woods, noted pal of Donald Trump, was in a single vehicle accident this morning. I'm calling it a karma crash.
Wow.
Tiger Woods campaigned and voted for Donald Trump. I don't care. Stopped caring about Tiger when he started golfing with Trump. I mean, and I could go down the list. There are thousands and thousands of these out there. But let me get this straight. So we have an African American, Asian American golf legend, one of the greatest golfers of all times, who is really, I mean, an American, legend in so many ways, and such a role model for youth in our country. He gets in this horrible car accident, and instead of saying, gosh, I hope Tiger Woods is okay, Danielle, the response from people that don't like Donald Trump is to immediately say, I hope that he dies in this car crash because he supports President Donald Trump. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's disgusting. It reminds me of when Trump found out that Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, and he said, oh my gosh, I hope that she's okay, wow. And he only had positive things to say about her. Not, I'm so glad she's dead, or something horrible. He only had positive things to say about her. And I think that just shows how so many people on our side, Trump included, we actually do take the high road. They claim we're the ones who are evil. And it's like, no, we actually care about another human being.
And my question to the left is, do Black Lives Matter or not? Because, 1 minute you're wishing death on Tiger Woods, the next minute you're marching in the streets. I mean, look, we just saw this happen with Rush Limbaugh, too.
We did. That's right.
The hashtag rest in piss, I think, was trending. And it's disgusting. Yet they can actually mourn on the cover of the New York Times a real terrorist, call him an Astor scholar.
Oh,
an astute religious scholar,
yes.
You mean? Oh, yes. Absolutely.
I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, Tiger Woods got the Medal of Freedom from your father-in-law not too long ago because he deserved it.
Yeah.
And there is nothing in this world that would ever make me wish death upon a Democrat, a liberal, somebody that thought differently than me. And I just don't know how we got here.
Yeah.
This is not the United States of America, and it's certainly not the Party of Unity, but, supposedly they go high.
Well, let me give you another example of how they don't go high on the other side. There's something, in case you haven't heard, called TrumpVoterList.org. Now, if you're wondering what this is, maybe warning before you type that into your browser, because this is basically a group who wants to know if you voted for Donald Trump. And if you voted for Donald Trump, then you are blacklisted. They want your neighbors to rat you out. They want everyone to turn you in as though you have committed some egregious crime. The crime was voting for President Donald Trump. Now, this was tried not too long ago. There was something called Trump Accountability Project, which some folks might have heard of. It was taken down, thank goodness. But that group was started by former deputy campaign manager for none other than Pete Buttigieg, who now has a role in the Biden administration. I'm almost at a loss when we're talking about this, because honestly, we have to move past this. People have got to start acting civil. They've got to start acting rational and sane, and exercising your right as an American citizen to vote for your choice for president of the United States should not get you on a list. It should not do anything other than reflect your sentiments out there, and you get to cast your one vote. This is crazy.
And Laura, we all know what happened the last time a country started registering people.
That's right.
Yet they call us Nazis. It's insane, and as somebody who did help, your father-in-law and served in the administration, there are active groups still tracking us, trying to figure out where we're going, where are we working now, so that they can call those employers, either blackmail them or threaten to cancel them or threaten to call their clients, and really just shake them down into terminating us, which is why, I'm never going to post where I'm working on social media or anywhere else. I'm grateful for that, but it's just, it's outrageous. I don't understand. These are the folks who claim to be so open-minded, who claim to be so, determined to bring this country back together. Yet you still can't walk down the street with a red hat on. Somebody will literally punch you or spit on you or say something. It's just outrageous.
Yeah. It's terrible. I think it's really scary, but I feel like, Danielle, that the cancel culture, and I mean, this is a great example of cancel culture, it has to have some end, because people have to push back on this. And if you voted for Donald Trump out there, I want you to be proud of your vote. You voted for your country, you voted for your flag, you voted for the heroes who've given their lives for America, you voted for God, you voted for the unborn, you voted for a lot of great things, and this is ridiculous. I don't want people to ever feel ashamed of their vote for Donald Trump. This is outrageous. This has to stop.
It has to stop. And I think that's what's so great about so many Trump supporters is they've taken back the narrative and saying, you know, we don't care if you call us Trump supporters. We are Trump supporters. Right. We actually love Trump. And if you're going to make a list, you know, I think that that's horrible, a horrible precedent. But they're going to say, you know what, put me on that list. I want the list to be even longer. We have millions and millions of names on this list. And, you know, I think just the fact that the Democrats, they don't even want a list, let's say, for someone registered to vote. They don't want anything for that. They want anyone to be able to come in and do that. Just open the floodgates, open the floodgates to our borders. But when it comes to being a Trump supporter, they want the list so they can demonize you. It's
absolutely
not just social intimidation, but really preventing you from working, preventing you from getting a job. And it's like, we need to stand together because we're half the country. So how can they act like we don't exist? They can't stamp us out. We are millions of people.
And when they tried, you know, what ended up happening is President Trump went up almost 16 million voters in the silent majority. It grew, and he ended up getting the most votes of any incumbent president in history.
That's right.
So the more they try to suppress us, call us deplorables, we embrace it. You know, I remember basket of deplorables. We took that and ran with it. You know,
proud of it.
And it reminds me of impeachment, how Trump's numbers would go up during impeachment because people see how ridiculous it is, how it's a witch hunt. So it's like the more they try to come down on us, the more we're emboldened to say, wow, I'm just confirmed of how ridiculous you are.
I actually posted this the other day on my social media because I said the irony is that the Hollywood hypocrites, the elitists in California who hate this man, you know, have literally turned him into, you know, sort of a martyr, so to speak, by, you know, the unconstitutional censorship, the partisan investigations, you know, just obviously the ridicule and the isolation and all of the relentless attacks. Even the most, you know, the worst Trump detractors start to feel sorry for him after a while. And, you know, what they're doing is they're positioning Trump for what I consider the greatest storyline in Hollywood history, which is the comeback.
Well, stay tuned for that. Before we get to...
I mean, Rocky did it.
Before we get to the comeback, Danielle, you brought up something that I want to touch on briefly here at the end, which is that the Democrats have been trying, guys, for a long time to thwart, so to speak, our voting system. Did you feel at home like the last election maybe wasn't right? Did it feel a little off to you? Do you not still, are you sure that Joe Biden got 81 million votes? Because a lot of people aren't. And instead of doing things that would give more transparency to our voting process and ensure people of the security and the safety of our American system, every single House Democrat has signed a bill now that it's this, they call it a voting rights bill, but let me tell you a little bit about what it does. It abolishes voter ID laws across the country. You don't need an ID to vote, which, Lynne, you and I have talked about this before. The Democrats continue to argue that it is racist to ask people to present some form of identification to say you are of legal age, you are the person you say you are, and that you can cast a vote. And yet somehow that's racist because, I don't know, people of Hispanic and Black origins somehow cannot get an ID? I don't understand.
Let me tell you something. I don't know any Black or Hispanic person that doesn't have a valid driver's license or ID. I don't know any Black or Hispanic person that doesn't know how to operate a computer. I don't know any Black or Hispanic person who doesn't know how to find their local DMV. You know, it's almost more racist for these quote-unquote white saviors to think that we are incapable of being able to get an ID, vote for ourselves, find the polling stations, find the DMV. And the fact that, again, had President Trump said something like that, the outrage just would have been never ending. And, for folks to be able to say with a straight face, voter ID or having an ID or requiring an ID is racist. When we require it to buy alcohol, require it to buy cigarettes,
fly in an airplane,
to fly on an
anywhere.
airplane.
Yeah.
Last I checked,
Drive a
black people
car.
fly.
Yeah.
It's just insane.
Well, something else, Danielle, that this bill does is it creates automatic voter registration across the country. They want to expand early voting. So if it wasn't crazy enough to start voting for President of the United States, which we know is in November every 4 years, but you could start voting in like August in some places. They want it even earlier. They want more
Christmas.
opportunity.
The year before.
More opportunity to I don't know, make people question the results, allow for fraud. So they want
could see where they need to put votes.
They want more absentee voting. They want more voting by mail. Didn't we just see, Danielle, what a complete and total disaster this was on November 3rd, 2020?
It was a total disaster, but I think they see how beneficial COVID was for opening the floodgates to the
Chaos
mail-in
and
ballots.
confusion.
So now they're like, oh, well, even after COVID, we can still continue this mail-in ballot situation no matter what. And of course, they're going to drag out COVID as long as they can and use that as an excuse for their failed economic policies. But as far as the mail-in voting, they've realized, well, this is a recipe for them because it opens the door to any kind of fraud and they can act like these are actually registered people.
Well, let me just pose this. So there is another bill out there supported by the Biden White House that would grant amnesty to 11 million illegal immigrants in the United States of America. Simultaneously, we have the voting rights bill trying to be pushed forward, which every Democrat again in the House has signed on to. Isn't it interesting that
timing.
These are all happening together? Isn't it interesting that they want people to just walk up to a voting location now that our southern border is wide open and anybody can come in and cast a vote, and guess who they think that they're going to vote for? They think they're going to vote for Democrats down the ticket. It's really frightening. We need to be combating fraud, not creating more space for fraud. Let's hope that this bill is not put forward and it does not make it very far, because this is the problem, folks. Whenever you have Democrats in control of the House, Democrats in control of the Senate, and Democrats in control of the White House, you get nonsense and garbage like this that is going to make America an unrecognizable place in the very near future if this gets put forward.
And look, I take no pleasure in saying I told you so, because I honestly don't. Because we tried to warn them that if they voted for Biden, that, to streamline 11 million illegals to citizenship was going to basically negate the entire black vote. And y'all did it to yourselves. That's all I have to say. Because, again, you voted yourself right out of an opinion, right out of, priorities. And it's sad. But, again, sometimes people have to learn the hard way. And, I think people are starting to recognize that 240 characters is not the end of the world. When you're losing jobs, when you're obviously not getting your student loans waived, when you're going back into senseless wars like Syria, it just doesn't balance out. And there's a lot of voter remorse out there.
Yep, a lot of people want their vote back, and they probably like to cast it for Donald Trump. Maybe they actually did. We don't really know.
That's right.
Anyway, I want to say thank you to my guests today, to Lynne and Danielle, as always, for being with us. Thank you, as always, to our great audience at home. We will see you right back here next week for more of The Right View.